So often the misunderstandings that occur in everyday life or the arguments that happen, they seem like they're about a particular action or a particular event that went on, or even someone's thought. But really what's going on is there's these underlying core staple issues that are misaligned. And one person is talking about one thing, another person is talking about another. They seem like they're talking about the same topic, but really it's about their priorities and their values being misaligned. My dream is to help couples who love each other but don't realize the true causes of their disagreements or their miscommunications.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about improving our relationships. I'm delighted to welcome Nick Brancato. Nick is a personal development coach, educator, relationship strategist, and the author of the new book, Prioritize Us. You can reach Nick at his website, nickbrancato.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Nick. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I'm excited because this conversation matters, because relationships matter. And I love, as I've been reading your book, and I'm really enjoying it because it provides a practical language and a framework, a structure to be able to help couples or any relationship, whether it's romantic or otherwise, to be able to get to the root of that is underlying our unmet expectations, our frustrations, our conflicts. And it really matters that we get to that underlying root, because a lot of times the things we think we're upset about and that we're having conflict about is not really the problem. Don't you think?
Absolutely. That's so true. So often the misunderstandings that occur in everyday life or the arguments that happen, they seem like they're about a particular action or a particular event that went on, or even someone's thought. But really what's going on is there's these underlying core staple issues that are misaligned. And one person is talking about one thing, another person is talking about another. They seem like they're talking about the same topic, but really it's about their priorities and their values being misaligned.
Isn't that amazing? My husband words it this way, a class he took. He said, cow one is not cow two. And that's a funny way to put it. If I'm talking about a cow and I'm describing it, and in my brain, I have this white cow with the black spots on it. But what you're hearing and what you're understanding and the picture that's in your mind is this, brown, shaggy cow with horns on it or something. We think we're on the same page, but we're really not. And I have a wonderful friend who immigrated from England, and she said, the problem with the English and the Americans is we are separated by a common language. We use the same words, but they mean different things. And so being able to recognize, okay, let's get on the same page so that cow one is cow two. We're not separated by a common language. We are on the same page. And it is surprisingly simple, and yet simple doesn't always mean easy. So let's talk a little bit about, can you just first of all explain what a priority is, what a life priority is?
Sure. A priority is the things that are most important to you at a particular moment. Now, priorities change. They can change day to day. They can change over time. A priority is different than a value, which is a core belief that remains staple. So while they often are the same thing, they're not necessarily the same thing. And that's important to distinguish, because someone can be talking about something that's very important to them today or tomorrow or this week, but it might not be a pillar of their life. Like, for example, sometimes something happens at work where your career all of a sudden has to become one of your top priorities. Maybe you're on the verge of a promotion. Maybe you're on the verge of being fired. Maybe you need to focus on work right now, and that has to become one of your top priorities. And maybe career overall in your life is actually a lower priority, and maybe you're valuing your relationships more, or your safety or your health more.
Yes. And that's interesting to be able to think about the differences where some things are consistent and some things are going to change, and they can change throughout our life. So if I'm in a stage where I'm single and I would really like to have a relationship. That might be my top priority is being able to find that person. And then I'm moving on through life, and maybe I've just had my first child, and I have a priority of, gosh, if I could just get some sleep, I could function as a human being, or just the safety and well-being of this little one matters so much. And then as we progress on, if we're in a state where we are suffering from an illness, then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, all I want to feel is I just want to get better. I'm miserable. Or moving on. Or maybe we're in a stage of life where our parents are aging and we're spending time taking care of them, and that's an issue. And obviously throughout this, we got to have money to survive, so our career and our finances are going to be a priority. And maybe, I'm stressed and I need a vacation, I need a break, maybe that's a priority. And how things can change, and they can be very different from what one person prioritizes and values, and when another person is in that state of. So, one of my things that I loved as I was reading your book was a story, because I think sometimes as we try to explain in words, and really words are all we have, but a story form of words kind of creates a picture to be able to say, okay, these words you're saying, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to a real relationship? How can this help me? And so you gave an example of Sarah and Matt, who had just some conflict over how to spend their weekends. So when you go to work Monday through Friday, and now we've got a weekend coming up. And Sarah, man, she just wants to get outdoors. She wants to go play. She wants to go do something. And Matt, he just wants to sit around at home. He wants to sleep in. He wants to maybe have a movie marathon. He just wants to, just stay home and relax. And so they've been married for about 5 years, and it seems like a little thing, but it becomes more and more of a conflict. Like, when she wants to go and do her fun thing, he's frustrated and angry because that's not what he wants to do. And when he wants to just sit home and doesn't want to go, she's feeling frustrated. And both of them are feeling like he doesn't care, she doesn't care. They don't see my needs. They don't see what I want, what I need. And it becomes actually a conflict. And because weekends happen every week, it's a conflict that comes up every week. So what the framework and the vocabulary that you have provided is to make a list of, well, not make a list, you have the list of 10 priorities, and then you write down from 1 to 10 what's most important to me right now, what's second, what's third. And so as he goes down her list and as she goes down her list, then we look at what's different. Like here on this thing, we find for her that some of the things that she really values is her health, and also entertainment. Those are the kinds of things that she prioritizes. But for him, what he prioritizes and what matters to him are communication and finances. So their actions are based on, this is what I want. So, and then I also loved that as when we look at, okay, we don't have to be the same, which matters a lot. And we don't have to say, well, okay, everybody, we always have to do what she wants, or we always have to do what he wants. Instead, it is because now I understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Exactly. It helps you find the motives. And so in their case, what was going on is they think they're arguing about time, and really their arguments are about more underlying issues. So while she values being able to get out, he's valuing finances, and he's working hard during the week and needs to rest and relax to recover, whereas she's ready to go, and so they misalign. So one of the things that you can do in a situation like that is leave Saturday, for example, to rest and recoup and maybe binge Netflix or whatever. And on Sunday, you can do an activity because now you're recovered a bit, and they want to have the shared quality time together is what's really important.
That was excellent. In their compromise that they came up with it in this scenario is, okay, one weekend we're going to do what she wants. We're going to go do this outdoor activity. And then one weekend in the month, we're going to do what he wants. We're going to sleep in. We're going to have a leisurely breakfast, maybe watch some shows. And then on the other weekends, we're going to do that compromise like you talked about. Like maybe we'll do some of his and some of hers. And it matters when we look at what is underlying, because whenever we have an action, it is our knee-jerk response is we also create a story to go with it. Like, he wants to do this. He doesn't want to do what I want to do. That means he doesn't care, or he is not valuing time spent with me, or she is not appreciating all this effort that I'm putting in. And so all these stories that we create make what starts as a tiny problem, and it just adds layers until it becomes big. And so that finding that common ground helps us to feel, first of all, we get understanding, and then we have, oh, okay, if we compromise, and I know that I'm compromising, I'm okay with not always doing what I want, as long as I can get what I want at least some of the time, and it feels fair. And now I feel seen. I feel heard. I feel valued, and that helps me feel emotionally safe. So I just thought it was beautiful in putting it into how do I apply this information?
What you said is so important. People tell a story about everything for the most part. We create these narratives in our about our lives, about what's going on, and often they're false narratives because we just fill in the blanks and sort of make up a story to reconcile what we think is going on or what our knee-jerk reaction is to what's going on, as you said. And using a data-driven system like the total difference score in Prioritize Us, we're able to objectively look at things and see where we're currently at, like mathematically almost, from a data-driven perspective, as opposed to just our subjective version of reality.
Wow. Yes. Yes. And once again, you put in some vocabulary to help make it. So this is not an emotional knee-jerk reaction. We're talking about numbers. I
Right.
mean, and if I look at what my number one is his number 10 on the list, I have a difference of nine. We have a really different priority about this particular issue. And now I'm aware.
Yes. And now you can better understand, you can adopt a learning stance to try to understand why your partner has it. Why, how could you have it ranked one and they have it ranked 10? Are we really that different? Do the words mean different things to each of us? Or did they used to be a shared priority for both of us and now it no longer is? Has priority drift occurred where we had a shared value and now over time it's changed gradually, sometimes, often gradually, but sometimes because of a major life event like a change of careers or giving birth or a sickness or something like that, it can change and shift. And if you don't check in periodically about your priorities using a test like the Prioritize Us test to get a total difference score, you won't be able to know when priority drift is occurring. So, for example, sometimes I was working with a couple and they both started out career was just about their number one priority for both of them. Then they got married, career was still their top priority. Then all of a sudden, children came into the picture. Now, all of a sudden, relationships, safety, finances becomes one of the partner's top priorities, while the other is still very career focused. Obviously, their secondary and third priorities are relationships and the baby and things like that. They have not shifted their focus from their career. So unless these two partners check in, it's going to seem like one maybe values quality time more than the other because one is always working, but really they're trying to provide financial stability. That's their way of providing for the future. So it could seem like there's a conflict because of the differences in time usage. But really, what's going on is one has a previous priority and the other has a new priority, and they haven't reconciled those and talked about them yet.
Mhm. Okay. So what do I do when that happens? We used to be on the same page. We're not on the same page. And now I'm aware of it. What's the next step?
Right. The next step is to discuss why things are the way they are. For example, many times we go on autopilot, and the person who is focusing on their career just hasn't readjusted to their new family life with the baby. They haven't consciously sat down and looked at their priorities and see whether or not they really value their career above, say, their relationships or their safety or their health or financial security. Maybe it's actually different now, or maybe it's still the same, and that's just as important to know. If career is still your top priority because you're that driven, well, then you have to have a conversation about, in the beginning of our relationship, we were both very career driven, and now things have shifted. I still have those same career goals, and we have to find a way for me to honor those goals while also honoring our new family.
And that requires compromise.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
some, because we still value and we still have, this is important to me, this matters to me right here, right now. And to be able to recognize this is what matters to you, and then act on it, to give a little bit. If we don't give a little bit and just say, well, this is what I want, we don't have a very good relationship, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I have a couple tools in the book to help with that. One is taking a look at your priorities and looking at how much effort you're putting forth and how much and what your satisfaction level is. That's important to know because those things aren't always aligned. Another is looking at your priorities and see how much time, like hours per week, you're investing in each one. So we often discover misalignments there. So you say you value your relationships, but you're only spending a couple hours a week on them, even though they're a high priority. Or you say career is most important to you, but you're only putting in that 40-hour work week. You're not spending additional time on it when it's one of your highest priorities. So we often need to check in with ourselves to see if our actions are in alignment with our intentions.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I did want to talk about that. That this is not only to help uh, recognize where you align in your relationship, but as you mentioned before, a lot of times we're on autopilot. We do things because that's the way you do it. And it might be because that's the way your parents did it, or that's what you think should be done, or whatever maybe your measure of success or something. But this is what we do. And then if you ask, what are your priorities? What matters to you? And then you might say, well, I want my relationship. This matters. And you don't even recognize that that doesn't align with where the time or where the effort is going. And I think being aware of our what I'm doing matters, because I am half of any equation in a relationship. It's not, the burden is not all on the other person. It's me. I need to know who I am and what I want. And sometimes I think I looked at those 10 things and I thought, I don't want to rank them from 1 to 10 because they all matter. So I don't, I wasn't quite sure how to do that. But but I think even thinking about what matters to me is kind of increases your self-awareness.
Yes, so true. And one of the things that you touched on there is I think routines and rituals, because the things that are on autopilot. So often very successful people are successful because they build these routines around their career or around their family or around their goals, whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And so routines are fabulous for putting things on autopilot eventually. But the problem is if you don't check in on your routines with your time allotment to each one, they can easily be old systems in place, old routines in place that don't reflect your current priorities. As your priorities change over time, so should your time allotment. So if you get too habitual, too routinized, then it's very easy to have a time drift occur where your priorities are not in alignment with your time usage.
Our time matters because we
So
all get
much.
24 hours in a day. It doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor or whatever, we get that same amount of time. And where we use our time, hopefully, is aligned with our priorities, but it often isn't. It can be easy to get sucked into, I mean, things like watching TV or social media or watching YouTube or just movies, whatever,
Yeah.
and not put it in a place that matters. And the sad thing about that is I can always make another dollar, but I can never make another day.
Yes.
So when you talk about prioritize us, I loved the title of the book. It's talking about a relationship and we have things. I think one common place that is a misunderstanding is time together versus time at work, where one person thinks, but I am at work to support my family or my relationship. And it is necessary. But if you forget why you're doing that thing, um, you can lose the thing that you were working for. Does that make sense?
Makes so much sense. And when people are spending a lot of time at work and the other partner is feeling maybe neglected or like they're not being taken into account, they're often prioritizing communication and their relationships, while the other person is prioritizing career and financial security and maybe safety. And so, one of the things that we can do in situations like that is to set up little rituals that give you time to connect. For example, maybe it's coffee or tea together for 15 minutes in the morning. Maybe it's a coffee after dinner where you sit together and just take 15 minutes to connect, where it's not all about work and it's not all about tasks and what you have to do, but rather about the actual relationship, about me and you, and just connecting for a few minutes every day. And if you ritualize that and it becomes routine, then all of a sudden you're creating these pillars in your relationship that are self-reinforcing, and it creates a upward spiral because you're doing these positive things on a day-to-day basis, and just improving your relationship like 1% a day will have profound impacts after a month, after a year.
Okay, I love that. And I love that you brought this up. And some of the things is you gave this example of, okay, let's have some tea together or let's have a cup of coffee where it's 15 minutes. So we talked about time and the allocation of time and how, especially if we're trying to work on a career and you even mentioned, 40 hours a week may not be enough. I may need more. So it can feel overwhelming and frustrating even when someone says, but I need time for us. It's like, don't ask me to do any more. I'm stretched to the limit. But when you put it into the framework of 15 minutes a day, I can do that. That's easy. The length of the time when you say we need to spend time together, and someone might be thinking, you want hours and hours and hours? But if it's, can we spend 15 minutes where it's just a connection? That feels doable. Even when someone is focusing on their career because they want to grow and progress and build that up, 15 minutes in a routine is doable. And I also loved, we talked earlier about having a routine, how we get into kind of this autopilot where we just do what we do because that's what you do. And it can be looked at as a bad thing, but it can also be a very good thing when you add that small thing that can become a routine. And then it is just as easy and normal and natural to spend that 15 minutes together each day that will help us build the relationship and to feel that connection. And it was easy. I don't even have to think about it. I have to think, oh my gosh, what am I going to have to do in order to make? Sometimes I think in relationships, we think it has to be something big. Like if I don't, come up with a trip to Paris or Cancun and spend a week or have 24 roses, it doesn't, we don't need that. And you can't really do
Yes.
that consistently anyway. I mean, I can't
Yeah,
do that every day.
it's the myth of the grand gesture. Everybody thinks that they have to devote a whole day or do a trip to Paris or really celebrate in some kind of fantastical way, when really it's about the the consistent, small quality moments that make a relationship eventually thrive and that sever a connection if those aren't going on. If you don't have those moments every day where you can take some time to connect, then the connection will weaken over time.
That is brilliant. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I had a question, and that was about what inspired you to write this book. Is there a story behind it? Is there, I mean, I know that there's a need, but I know you know that there's a need, but can we hear the story of the need?
Sure, absolutely. So the story of how Prioritize Us came to be actually started in somewhat of a crisis. My wife was having some serious mental health issues, and eventually we found out that she's a paranoid schizophrenic. And everything is fine now. It has a happy ending. She's on the right medication, and she's doing incredibly well. So it's a very happy story. But for several years, it was really scary. We didn't know what was going on. She was having hallucinations and paranoia about everyday things, and she was hearing voices and things like that. So we didn't know what was going on. And prior to her medical crisis, we had had a lot of sort of communication issues in our relationship. Uh, we speak very different languages. So we come at communication from different directions. And so there was a lot of small arguments and just turmoil here and there around communication. And when she got sick and started having medical issues, what happened is health became our top priority and safety became our top priority. And so all of a sudden, all of our issues started to melt away during this most terrible time of turmoil. We were communicating more effectively, things were better. And so it was improving. And it wasn't just because we were worried that she was sick, because Becca didn't, she knew she was having issues, but she didn't even really know the extent that she was sick. When you have schizophrenia, it's very hard to know that you even have something wrong with you. So, so things were improving in our relationship because our priorities had aligned. And so what I thought was, well, if we have these few priorities and they're our important thing to focus on, what else do we need to focus on? So let's identify our core life priorities and rank those and see where they are. And so that's where the total difference score was born. We each ranked our priorities and we did a difference between my ranking and her ranking. And we were able to see where we aligned and where we differed. And then I've used the priority tool with a lot of coaching clients individually to see where their priorities are. So I know how to coach them. And then often when they use it in their relationship too, it's so revealing what you discover, where your core pillars of strength are, where you align, and where the big differences are, where there's likely to be conflict, and where more communication is necessary. So the thing about the total difference score is that even if you get a high score, which would reflect, uh, some people would think that it might be,
Disconnect.
yeah, a disconnect. It's really just an opportunity for communication. The higher your score, the more areas you need to communicate on. And the lower your score, the more areas you're probably aligned, the more effortless your decision making is going to be together. And so through this crisis, we were able to learn more about ourselves and about each other, especially, and really come together. And our priorities have remained much more in alignment because we've discussed them openly. And it's something that we do regular check ins on.
Wow. Okay. I was not expecting that as the answer. I assumed maybe a relationship issue, but not compounded with a critical health issue. So, how fascinating that you've had a horrible problem where you look at it from one angle and say, wow, we were already having a hard time. This is horrible. And on the other hand, it was, wow, our priorities are now aligned. We are on the same page. We want the same things. It's right in front of us. And the other things are now in the peripheral. They don't matter as much. And when we're on that same page, things are going to be okay. And you were able to find the answers to help her with her health, which I'm very grateful that you have a happy ending to your story. And the wonderful thing is, your happy ending is now magnified and creating a happy ending for many other people.
Yes, that's my dream is to help couples who love each other but don't realize the true causes of their disagreements or their miscommunications.
And isn't it wonderful, just as a refresher here, that we can go from a place of discord, of frustration, of not getting along, and know that it is possible to go from that state into a state of alignment. And once again, it's very important, and you emphasize it in your book, that alignment does not mean that we are mirror images of each other. It does not mean that, okay, right now I prioritize health first and safety second. So that means you need to prioritize health first and safety second. And to allow that freedom for not only ourselves, but for our partner to say, okay, I'm not going to try to influence what you say, and I'm not going to get offended or upset that you're not prioritizing what I'm prioritizing. And it might require some follow up conversations. Like if one person puts career at number one and I put my relationship at number one, and then I get all upset and say, you don't prioritize me over blah, blah, blah. The whole idea, it just provides a framework and a structure to improve communication. And and communication is key.
It
And when you
really is.
have
And I think it all breeds empathy so that you're able to really understand the other person's perspective. And one of the great things that happens when you know each other's priorities, you can begin to take them into account better in your everyday actions. And when you discuss them, you can work more on integration instead of sort of compartmentalization, which most people do. Like they keep their world separate, they keep their work here and their relationships here and their finances here. And if you're aware of what each other's priorities are, then you can look for clever ways to join things together. For example, if one person is prioritizing communication and relationship, and another person is prioritizing health, you could take like a walk together every day for 20 minutes or something like that so that you're doing something healthy while also communicating at the same time. One of the things that's really powerful that happens when you look at your priorities and you take the test and you get a total different score is you can understand your partner's main areas of importance to them. And then you can begin to take those issues that are those values that are so important to them and make them important to you as well. Whereas you might have neglected them before because it's something you don't even think about. And so that allows you to better integrate things into your life. For example, like my wife is also my editor for the book, and she edits all my writing and she does an amazing job. So when I'm prioritizing career, we found a way for her to also take part, and she's exceptional at it as well, which makes it easy. And not everyone can integrate in the same kind of way, but we do that more and more in our relationship because the priorities are so clear, because we know what each other values.
and that is so important. I'm going to go back to the story, how we have a tendency to come up with a story to go with someone's action. And sometimes the story is they're just trying to make me miserable, or they just don't care. And when we come up with stories like that, and then their actions in our mind, in our interpretation, validates our idea when their intent might have been completely different. So that just becoming aware and recognizing our strengths, finding creative ways to be able to work together. And like you mentioned, your example of writing a book and editing a book is working for you. And it might not work for everybody. In fact, we have about a 99% chance that's not going to be everybody's situation, but that doesn't matter because you're working on your relationship and other people can come up with creative ways that match with their lifestyle and their situation. And it makes it unique for us. I love it.
Really does. And you have to know what you don't know before you can learn it. And so that's what this book really helps people to do. It puts light on an area that's otherwise dark or gray that you wouldn't see. Priorities is actually something that's pretty new relative to humans. It's only like 100 years old. Before that, the word priorities didn't exist. There was only the word priority. You just have your top priority, and that's it. It's it's in modern times where people are juggling so many things, and there's so much better transportation, so much more efficiencies in communication that we have this word priorities now. Everybody's juggling multiple things that are most important to them.
Yeah, and that can feel completely overwhelming. Your statement, the comment of knowing what you don't know, it almost feels like that phrase encapsulates everything that we're talking about today, is learning to know what we don't know. And I've heard that there's 4 stages to our competence, our learning. And the first is unconscious incompetence, which means I don't even know what I don't know. And then the next level is conscious incompetence, which sounds horrible, but it means, wow, I'm just aware that I don't know everything. And that's disconcerting. It's uncomfortable, but it's also the first step towards competence. Then the next level is conscious competence. Like I'm doing something that's right, but it's new and it's hard and it's weird. And then we get to unconscious competence, where it's, wow, this is working and it is so easy. And I think in a highly aligned relationship, that's really what we're working for, is our relationship is good. I feel loved. I feel connection. I feel valued. I feel seen. I feel heard. We're having a great time together. And it's so easy. And that is what's possible. But that first step is becoming conscious of what we don't know. So thank you. That was amazing.
Thank you. That was so well said. I love what you talked about, the adult learning model, those 4 stages. It's so important. I think that everybody is kind of like a piece of Swiss cheese. We all have gaps in our knowledge, but you don't necessarily know where. And then everybody has gaps, but they're in different places. So if there's 100 things to know about a relationship or life, and I know 50 of them, and you know 50 of them, they're not going to be the same 50. There's going to be some overlap, but a lot's going to be different. And so we can learn from each other by digging at the underlying issues and actually the core values that are making up who we really are. We're just not often thinking about them.
That is excellent. So we have a sweet Swiss cheese relationship. I got holes. I'm not perfect, but it doesn't matter. It's enough. And actually, because our holes are in different places, it makes us complete. And I am better because my husband is different, um, because he fills gaps that I have, and I fill gaps that he has. So, that's amazing. All right, is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Um, I just want to thank you so much for having me on. I love talking with you. It's a great conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time with me.
It has absolutely been my pleasure. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Anthony DeAngelo. He said, "Treasure your relationships, not your possessions." Today, I invite our listeners to prioritize our relationships. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.